When we think about Stoicism in ancient Rome, it's easy to imagine a society where everyone walked around with calm composure, making rational decisions and living virtuous lives. The image of philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, or Epictetus dominates our idea of what Rome might have been like under the influence of Stoic philosophy. But here's the truth. Daily life in ancient Rome looked nothing like the serene, disciplined world of Stoic ideals. Instead, Rome was a city of extremes: excess and poverty, ambition and corruption, glory and violence. While Stoicism provided a framework for living virtuously, the reality of Roman life often clashed with these lofty ideals. The hustle and chaos of the Roman streets, the hunger for power, and the endless pursuit of pleasure painted a much more complicated picture. Today, we'll dive into the fascinating contrast between Stoicism as a philosophy and the messy, unpredictable reality of daily life in ancient Rome. What did Stoicism actually look like when put into practice? How did it shape the lives of the elite versus the average Roman? And why did it fail to truly transform the chaotic reality of Rome? Let's uncover the truth. First, let's start with the basics. What did Stoicism teach? At its core, Stoicism is a philosophy of self-mastery. It teaches that we should focus on what we can control, our thoughts, emotions, and actions, and let go of what we cannot, such as external events or the opinions of others. It emphasizes living in harmony with nature, practicing virtue, and finding inner peace through rationality. Now, imagine applying these principles to the bustling, noisy streets of Rome. Picture merchants shouting over each other to sell their goods, chariots clattering along uneven cobblestones, and beggars pleading for coins. Add to this the occasional parade, riot, or public execution, and you've got a city that's anything but serene. For the average Roman citizen, Stoicism's ideals of composure and self-control must have felt like an impossible challenge. Many Romans lived in cramped, noisy apartments called insulae, where privacy was a luxury and fires were a constant threat. Life was a daily struggle to earn enough to survive, and the distractions of bread and circuses, free grain and public entertainment kept the masses occupied. For the Roman elite, Stoicism was more accessible, but even they struggled to live up to its ideals. Let's take a look at Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoics in history. As emperor, Marcus was the epitome of Stoic discipline and reflection. His personal writings, meditations, are filled with reminders to stay calm, act virtuously, and focus on what truly matters. But even Marcus wasn't immune to the pressures of daily life in Rome. He faced constant wars on the empire's borders, political intrigue and personal loss, including the deaths of many of his children. Despite his Stoic training, he made controversial decisions, such as appointing his son Commodus as his successor, that ultimately led to more chaos for Rome. Marcus Aurelius's reign highlights a key tension between Stoic philosophy and Roman reality. While Stoicism offered a guide for navigating personal challenges, it didn't provide solutions for the systemic problems that plagued the empire. The philosophy was deeply personal, focused on individual virtue and resilience, but Rome's issues were collective: corruption, inequality, and the constant threat of invasion. This brings us to another fascinating contrast: Stoicism's emphasis on moderation versus Rome's love of excess. The Stoics taught that true happiness comes from living simply and avoiding unnecessary desires. Seneca, for instance, warned against being enslaved by wealth and luxury, even though he himself was one of the wealthiest men in Rome. Yet, Roman society celebrated extravagance. Lavish feasts, opulent villas, and grand public spectacles were a way of life for the elite. The Colosseum, one of Rome's most famous landmarks, wasn't built to promote Stoic virtue. It was a stage for gladiatorial combat, bloodlust, and entertainment. For the Stoics, these indulgences were distractions from the pursuit of virtue, but for the average Roman, they were a welcome escape from the hardships of daily life. Even in religion, we see a divide between Stoicism and Roman reality. While Stoicism emphasized rationality and living in harmony with nature, Roman religion was steeped in superstition and rituals. Romans consulted oracles, interpreted omens, and performed sacrifices to appease their gods. These practices often clashed with the Stoic belief in a rational, ordered universe. For example, a Stoic might have viewed a thunderstorm as a natural phenomenon to be observed calmly, while the average Roman might have seen it as a sign of the god's anger. This difference highlights how Stoicism often ran counter to the cultural norms of the time. Let's not forget the political arena, where Stoicism's principles of honesty, humility, and justice were frequently ignored. Roman politics were brutal, filled with schemes, betrayals, and power struggles. Senators and emperors alike often prioritized ambition over virtue, doing whatever it took to maintain their status. Seneca himself served as an advisor to Emperor Nero, one of the most infamous rulers in Roman history. While Seneca tried to guide Nero with Stoic principles, he ultimately failed to curb the emperor's excesses. This failure wasn't just a reflection of Nero's character. It also revealed the limitations of Stoicism in a world driven by power and corruption. Despite these challenges, Stoicism did offer guidance to those who embraced it. For individuals seeking to navigate the chaos of Roman life, it provided tools for staying grounded, maintaining perspective, and enduring hardship. Epictetus, for example, was born a slave, but used Stoic teachings to rise above his circumstances and become a renowned philosopher. His story shows that Stoicism wasn't just for the elite. It was a philosophy that could empower anyone willing to practice it. Still, the gap between Stoic philosophy and Roman reality is undeniable. While Stoicism inspired many, it couldn't transform the culture of excess, ambition, and spectacle that defined ancient Rome. The philosophy remained a personal guide, not a societal revolution. So, what can we learn from this contrast today? Like the Romans, we live in a world filled with distractions, pressures, and contradictions. We aspire to live virtuously, but we often fall short. And that's okay. Stoicism teaches us that perfection isn't the goal, progress is. It reminds us to focus on what we can control, to find balance amidst the chaos, and to strive for a life of purpose and integrity, no matter how messy the world around us may be. As we continue to explore the contrast between Stoicism and daily life in ancient Rome, we must ask, why was Stoicism so revered despite its apparent mismatch with Roman reality? The answer lies in the philosophy's timeless appeal and its ability to address universal human struggles, even when society as a whole fell short of its ideals. One of Stoicism's greatest strengths was its practicality. It didn't promise utopia or perfection. It provided tools for individuals to endure the challenges of life with dignity. In a society like ancient Rome, where uncertainty was a constant companion, Stoicism offered a sense of stability and control. This made it particularly attractive to leaders, soldiers, and thinkers who needed to navigate a world filled with unpredictability. Take, for example, the Roman military. While the battlefield was anything but stoic in nature, chaotic, violent, and driven by conquest, the philosophy's teachings on self-discipline and courage resonated deeply with soldiers. Stoicism encouraged them to face danger with composure, to accept the risks of battle without succumbing to fear. For a soldier marching to war, the Stoic principle of focusing only on what is within your control, your actions, not the outcome, was a powerful mental anchor. But what about the ordinary citizens of Rome? For them, Stoicism was less about philosophical debates and more about survival. Many Romans faced harsh living conditions, from overcrowded apartments in the city to backbreaking labor in the countryside. For these individuals, Stoicism's emphasis on resilience and acceptance of hardship had practical value. While they might not have had access to formal Stoic teachings, the philosophy's core principles, enduring adversity, maintaining composure, and finding meaning in struggle, reflected their everyday realities. However, it's impossible to ignore how often Stoicism clashed with the cultural norms of the time. The Roman obsession with status and power, for instance, stood in stark contrast to the Stoic ideal of humility. Wealthy Romans displayed their riches through grand villas, elaborate clothing, and public spectacles, reinforcing social hierarchies. Meanwhile, Stoicism taught that material possessions were fleeting and that true wealth came from inner virtue. This disconnect is perhaps best illustrated by Seneca, who has become both a celebrated figure in Stoicism and a controversial one. As one of the wealthiest men in Rome, Seneca's lifestyle didn't always align with the Stoic ideals he preached. Critics accused him of hypocrisy, pointing to his opulent estate and close ties to the corrupt Emperor Nero. Yet, Seneca himself acknowledged this tension, often writing about the difficulty of living up to Stoic principles in a society driven by greed and ambition. His struggles remind us that Stoicism is a journey, not a destination, a practice of striving for virtue, even when we fall short. Let's not forget the public entertainment that dominated Roman life. Gladiator games, chariot races, and theatrical performances were the lifeblood of Roman culture, drawing massive crowds and fostering a sense of communal identity. For the Stoics, who valued rationality and self-restraint, these events were often seen as distractions, or worse, as morally corrupt. Marcus Aurelius, for example, is said to have avoided the games whenever possible, viewing them as a spectacle of unnecessary violence. Yet, for the average Roman, these events weren't just about entertainment. They were a release from the stresses of daily life. The games provided an escape, a chance to cheer, mourn, and feel part of something larger. This hunger for excitement and connection often overshadowed the Stoic call for moderation, highlighting the limitations of the philosophy in addressing the emotional needs of the masses. Religion was another area where Stoicism diverged from Roman daily life. While Stoicism emphasized rationality and alignment with the natural order, Roman religion was deeply rooted in rituals, superstitions, and the appeasement of gods. From household altars to grand temple ceremonies, religion permeated every aspect of Roman life. A farmer might offer sacrifices to ensure a good harvest, while a politician might consult an oracle before making a critical decision. For the Stoics, who believed in accepting the natural flow of the universe without trying to manipulate it, these practices must have seemed unnecessary at best and misguided at worst. The Stoic view of fate, embracing it without resistance, also clashed with the ambitious nature of Roman society. The Romans were builders, conquerors, and innovators. They prided themselves on their ability to shape the world to their will, expanding the empire's borders and creating architectural marvels that still stand today. This relentless pursuit of progress and glory often conflicted with the Stoic ideal of finding contentment in the present and accepting life's limitations. Even within the household, Stoicism was easier said than done. Roman families were hierarchical, with the paterfamilias, the male head of the household, holding absolute authority. While Stoicism encouraged mutual respect and fairness, the reality was often more complicated. Domestic life could be rife with conflicts, power struggles, and societal expectations that made living stoically a challenge. So, where does this leave us? Did Stoicism fail to influence Roman society, or was it simply applied in limited ways? The answer is a bit of both. Stoicism wasn't a mass movement that reshaped Roman culture. It was a deeply personal philosophy that appealed to those who sought a way to rise above life's chaos. For individuals like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and even ordinary Romans facing hardship, it provided a framework for navigating life's challenges with resilience and grace. Yet, the broader culture of Rome often overshadowed Stoic ideals. The noise, ambition, and spectacle of daily life made it difficult for many to fully embrace the philosophy. Even those who practiced Stoicism struggled to reconcile its teachings with the demands of Roman society. But perhaps this is why Stoicism remains so relevant today. It acknowledges the imperfection of the world and offers a path forward, no matter how messy life may be. In the end, Stoicism wasn't about creating a utopia or erasing the challenges of life. It was about learning to navigate them with clarity and composure. And while ancient Rome may not have embodied Stoic ideals as a whole, the philosophy's influence endured, offering timeless wisdom for those willing to embrace it. As we wrap up this exploration of Stoicism versus the reality of daily life in ancient Rome, it's clear that the two often stood in stark contrast. Stoicism was a philosophy of rationality, moderation, and virtue, while Roman society was fueled by ambition, excess, and spectacle. Yet this contrast is precisely what made Stoicism so compelling. It offered a framework for individuals to rise above the chaos and find meaning in a world that was anything but Stoic. For figures like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, Stoicism wasn't a way to change the world. It was a way to survive it with dignity. It didn't promise to eliminate hardship, but provided tools to endure it. The philosophy's core principles, focusing on what you can control, embracing fate, and striving for virtue, are as relevant now as they were then. In our own modern chaos, filled with distractions, challenges, and contradictions, Stoicism remains a beacon of clarity and resilience. But here's the question: how do we reconcile Stoicism's timeless wisdom with the messy reality of human life? The answer lies in understanding that Stoicism is a practice, not a state of perfection. Even the greatest Stoics struggled to fully live up to their ideals, and that's okay. The goal isn't to achieve flawless Stoicism, but to strive for progress, to reflect, adapt, and grow one step at a time. In many ways, the tension between Stoicism and Roman society mirrors our own struggles today. Like the Romans, we live in a world that celebrates excess, rewards ambition, and often prioritizes appearances over substance. And like the Romans, we sometimes find it difficult to live according to the principles we aspire to. But Stoicism reminds us that progress matters more than perfection, and that each small step toward virtue is a victory in itself. So what can we take away from this journey into Stoicism and ancient Rome? First, we can appreciate the depth and nuance of Stoic philosophy. It's not about suppressing emotions or living an austere life, but about cultivating balance, resilience, and purpose. Second, we can recognize that the challenges of living a Stoic life are timeless. Whether in the chaotic streets of Rome or the fast-paced digital world we inhabit today, the pursuit of virtue is never easy, but it's always worthwhile. If you've enjoyed this dive into Stoicism and its role in ancient Rome, consider sharing it with someone who might find it meaningful. Let's spread the wisdom of the Stoics and challenge the misconceptions that often cloud their philosophy. And don't forget to subscribe for more insights into ancient wisdom, history, and how we can apply timeless ideas to our modern lives. Together, we can navigate the chaos, embrace resilience, and strive to live with purpose.